Zombie apocalypse.
Is my screen visible to you?
Yes, visible.
Okay. Okay, so you're very much welcome to this session today. So we are going to be discussing BS6 emission norms. BS6 emission norms. Now, this is a topic that many of us are unaware of, and I believe it will be very good and it will be very informative for us to learn about it today. So, BS6 emission norms. Today, we'll talk about the introduction, what BS6 emission norms are. We'll compare between BS6 and BS4 fuels. Then we'll talk of the impact of BS6 emission norms on the automobile sector, the advantages, and then a conclusion. Please take it and ask questions where you can. Now, the introduction, what are these BS6 emission norms? Now, if you know what the term emission means, it gets rather almost clear what BS emission norms are. Now, emission is the release of gases into the atmosphere. Now, what are BS6 emission norms? Now, this BS here stands for Bharat stage. Now, Bharat stage emission norms or Bharat stage emission standards there are regulations or there are rules or there are laws that are laid down by the government of India to regulate the output of air pollutants from engines and vehicles into the atmosphere. So these are just rules and regulations that were started by the government to tackle the problem of air pollution in India. Now, many of us already know this, that India is facing pollution as one of its major problems. And in just the previous year, studies show that about 1.38%, there was 1.38% decrease in the GDP of India due to deaths and diseases caused by air pollution. So air pollution is really a problem in India. Now, the government of India, this started in 1991, where it introduced some rules, some regulations that regulate how much pollutants or how much quantity of pollutants can engines emit into the atmosphere, engines of vehicles. Now, today we are going to be talking about BS6 emission norms. Now, since 1991, when the government introduced the first norms or the first standards, until 2017, in 2017, there was BS4 emission norms, but from 2017 to 2020, there was a delay in the release of the BS5 emission norms rather. So in 2020, the government decided to publish the BS6 emission norms. Now, these are just the differences between the BS6 and the BS4 emission norms. Now, like I said, this is all just to contribute to a cleaner and more healthy India, which has less air pollution. Now, BS6 emission norms are stricter than BS4 emission norms, obviously, because on each and every stage, as these rules are improved, the government is working on restricting the emission of these pollutants into the atmosphere. Now, the government of India made these norms, and they were made, or they came to pass in April 2020, which is last year, whereby each and every car manufacturer and each and every car seller had to sell only BS6 cars with BS6 engines. So BS6 emission norms require, or they require an engine that contains 5 times lower sulfur traces compared to BS4 engines. And also in the BS6 fuels, or in the BS6 engines, the nitrogen oxide levels have been brought down by 70% for diesel and by 25% for petrol engines. Now, another point also is that the BS6 petrol cars are designed to emit much less pollutants into the atmosphere. They do not emit more than 60 milligrams per kg meter of nitrogen oxide into the air. And the particulate matter limit of these cars is at a maximum of 4.5 milligrams per kilometer. So this is so much less than the BS4 emission norms. Like you can see, the emissions have been reduced by 75% for diesel and by 25% for petrol, meaning that on the other side, these cars are going to be much costlier than the cars which were produced, because safer means more costly. Now, what's interesting again about these BS6 emission norms is that under these norms, or under these regulations that have been made, each and every car or each and every vehicle will be mandated to do an onboard diagnosis. In other words, each and every car will be mandated, it will be mandatory for each and every vehicle to have a regular check and to have a regular check of whether the engine is still well, or whether the engine is not polluting more than the set standards of pollutants into the environment. Another thing is that because of these norms, or because of these regulations that have been made, a diesel particulate filter has been introduced in diesel engines, meaning that when the pollutants go up into the atmosphere, they don't go as raw as they were. There is a filter that filters them so that they do not go and they do not make as much harm as they would without the filter. So that is the difference between the BS6 and the BS4 emission norms that have been made by the government of India. Now, when this law was made, it made a lot of, it caused a lot of shake in the automobile industry and among people who sell and who manufacture cars, because people were making BS4 engines, and now they were told that selling or manufacturing BS4 engines cars rather cannot be permitted anymore. So it's taking a long time for the automobile industry of India to settle and to adapt to these rules, but ultimately it is getting there. So when these rules were issued, or when these norms were issued, like I said, people had not known about them, and people took time to adjust to them, and some people were shaken, some people were against them. But at the end of the day, all these norms or all these rules are made to fight pollution, which is a real problem in India. Let me continue. Before I continue any further, I want to know if there are any questions until this far. Are there any questions until this far?
No question.
No question.
No question.
No questions. Okay, thank you very much. Now, to go further, I'm going to invite my colleague, Mr. Bajirangi, to continue further with the presentation. If there are no further questions, Mr. Bajirangi, please.
Okay. Good afternoon to all present here. And my friend, my team member is also talking about what is the introduction of BS6 and a BS and difference between BS6 norms or BS4 norms. And further, I am talking about further what is the impact of BS6 on automobile industry. Move to next slide, please. What does this means for the automobile, the industry? First point is more expensive vehicles, rise in fuel prices, and the phasing out of two-stroke engines for two-wheelers, the cessations of production of the Maruti 800 and the introduction of electric controls have been due to the regulations related to the vehicle. We're talking about the first point, more expensive vehicles. Because of BS6, because the BS6 norms was implemented by government April 1, 2020. After this, the car manufacturing companies manufacturing large amount of cars, manufacturing large amount of cars. So the expenses will be more, or in BS6 models manufacturing these cars, in which some major there is a major difference between BS4 engines and BS6. In BS4, the catalytic converter or DPF means diesel particular filters. These what is catalytic converter? Catalytic converter is nothing but it is a harmful. It reduce the harmful gases to harmful less. For example, when the nitrogen oxide produced by our cars, they convert into nitrogen dioxide or hydrogen peroxide. It's convert hydrogen peroxide to water. And the major rise in automobile sector in petrol engines due to BS6 engines to make BS6 engines hike of 25,000, around 25,000 hike in making the BS6 engines because of fuel injectors, fuel injector catalytic converters in BS6 engines. Large big size of catalytic converter built in the engine, so the cost of engines is very high. Cost of engines high because of fuel injectors and more filters are used in BS6 or and the price difference between the BS6 and BS4 is for petrol engines is 25,000 for petrol engines and 75,000 to 1 lakh for diesel engines. It's for it's for this hike in BS4 or BS6 engines, and the BS6 engines. Rise in fuel prices. Rise in fuel prices. The BS4 petrol, BS4 petrol is less impure than BS6. BS6 petrol is a more cleaner or more cleaner petrol. So, and in BS6 petrol, the sulfur in which sulfur contain is less than BS4 petrol. In BS4 petrol 50 ppm, the petrol contains 50 ppm in 50 ppm contains, and BS6 petrol contain 10 ppm, and in the place of sulfur we use some additives to sulfur. What use of sulfur in the petrol? Sulfur is a lubricant lubricant our engine. So we place of sulfur we used some additives to lubricant our engines. And I am talking about the third point. Third point, the many of car manufacturing companies or automobile, they were shifted to petrol engines because the hike of making the diesel engine in BS6. So they many of car companies like Maruti Suzuki, Hyundai are making petrol cars because of because the making of diesel engine is very high, and BS6 to making a BS6 engine is a very high it's a difference between making a BS6 and BS4, around 1 lakhs difference between to make a engine. Then the production cost will be increased because of production cost will be increased because of increasing production cost. The customer is a price sensitive. So so the companies company want to production cost will be increased when the festival is coming in India and India. When the festival is coming in India, during the festival time, so we many car companies or many automobile industries give some discount, give some discount on automobiles. But in BS6, when in BS6, it's give the companies and automobiles impact of automobile sector automobile industry dealers gives minor discount on it. It's very minor because the making cost is very high, because the making cost of BS6 is very high, and a BS6 engine is very very good for our environment. As the William told, the ppm of air quality will reduce, is increased when air pollution decreases, and it is very this engine is very good for our environment also. And automobile industries, there are in automobile industries, there is a sub automobile companies are also there. when the sub companies of automobile sub companies of making some make some parts, when the when the sub auto parts making company make the like fuel injector, catalytic converter, or diesel part parts filters were make impact on these companies have on any company, these companies impact by uh, these company impact any company they make engine parts, he on the cost of impact on its the cost of impact on these companies also. This is the this cost of companies on the hike of cost on these companies. Hello, move to next. William.
Yes, I've moved.
Advantage of BS6 norms: reduce the pollution rate. The BS6 vehicles are over 50% standards. The nitrogen oxide emission rate can come down by approximate 25%, and in the case of petrol engines. In diesel engines the 70% of pollution will reduce, and the cancer causing particles of matter emission from the diesel engines will be also come down by higher performance engines, regular mandatory on board diagnostic of engines. And it is advantages of BS6 is also it is a eco-friendly, it is a more refined, it is more cleaner, decrease the atmospheric pollution, and improve the air quality of our environment. It is equipped with fuel infusions and resulting in better throttling response and fuel efficiency. It is mandatory the installation of selective catalytic reductions, and the technology of diesel particular filters inside the engines to reduce the emission of ppms, and on the board diagnostic and real driving emission is a mandatory feature for all the BS4 vehicles, and they are used to monitor the real time emission for the exhaust gases of the vehicles. BS4 vehicles contains 50 ppm of sulfur, and but BS6 is a grade fuel consists 10 ppm of sulfur. This is the advantages of BS6 emission norms. And move to next slide. Conclusion is that the Bhatt stage norms is in every automobile vehicle. In every vehicle have exhaust systems. Exhaust system produce some exhaust gases like nitrogen oxide, hydrogen oxide, hydrocarbons monoxide, particulate matters, and or the pollution causing gases emitted by the engine. It reduced by using of BS6 engines, BS6 engines, and in BS6 engine reduced. It is reduced by engines, and that's it. Any questions and queries, then text in message box. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Bajrangi. That was very educating. So, if you have any question about these BS6 emission norms, please feel free to ask any question at all, and the team will answer you. Do we have anybody who has a question? Okay, I guess that is a no. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for attending this webinar.